Well, if you were with us last week, you know that we are having some fun as we're exploring the spiritual messages in Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. That very old book written in the late 1800s that has been around. That story just really resonates with us, I think, as humans. There's so much in it. And so we're looking at some of the spiritual messages that are in there. And last week we left Mr. Scrooge reeling from the visit of the ghost of his business partner, Jacob Marley, and his warning that that Scrooge also would be dragging around those chains in the afterlife if he didn't change his ways. But he had an opportunity to change his ways now, right now. And Marley was pretty adamant about that and said, you're going to get 3 more visits from 3 more ghosts. And Scrooge is like, no, can't I get it all done at once? And he's like, nope, got to get 3 different visits. And so he's like, all right, fine. Well, he wakes up the next day and he's not quite sure what to expect with this next visit with the ghost. He saw the ghost of Christmas past last week. And so now we're looking at the ghost of Christmas present. And again, he doesn't know quite what to expect with this next one. And as he wakes, he sees some light. And he's not quite sure what it's from. And he notices that it looks like it's coming from an adjoining room. So he goes and he opens the door slowly and he walks in and is amazed to see the room transformed. It's filled with greenery and holly and trees and lights and a blazing fire. And heaped up in the middle of the room is all of this food and meats and cheese and nuts and berries and bowls of punch and desserts and cakes and all sorts of things. And heaped up on top of that is a ginormous ghost. Big ghost. And he's got on a green velvet robe and with white fur trim. On his head, he's got a wreath made out of holly. And he's holding a horn of plenty. And it's filled with something doesn't look like fruit. So he is seeing this, and he notices that he's wearing a scabbard, and there's no sword in it, though. There's no sword in it. He's a little curious about that. And this guy's got dark brown curly hair, sparkling eyes, and an air of joy that just illuminates from him. And he says, I guess you've never seen anything like this before. And Scrooge says, not in this house. Right? Not in this house. So can you imagine meeting that sort of a ghost? The holidays are a time where we usually have extravagant feasts. We usually have outrageous celebrations, decorations of our homes and our businesses. It's the time of year that has its own music, right? No other time of year has its own music. No other time of year do we really drag a tree in our house and throw lights on it and enjoy its beauty, right? So Christmas is a special, festive, joyous sort of season. It's also the time of year that we open our hearts in generosity. We open our wallets in generosity. We've got our toy drive going on. We have a tendency to give to charities that help people that are less fortunate this time of year. So it's a very special time of year. And in thinking about this story from the 1800s and such, if we really go way, way back, it's this time of the return of light that our ancestors waited for, right? They go through the summer and the planting and the tending of all the fields and things, and then they have the harvest time, and then the light sort of disappears on them, doesn't it? These days get really, really short. And so this marked the time of year of celebration. The light is now going to be returning. We can prepare the fields again. We can plant again, et cetera, et cetera. So this was a time of joy and celebration from that aspect of the return of the light. And I think that's why so many of our holidays are associated with light at this end of the year time frame. So the ghost of Christmas present represents this love and joy and celebration that's in our hearts. Again, which is why I think this story is so meaningful to us for so long. And this is what we're going to be looking at today in the Ghosts of Christmas Present. This year, with our pandemic decor, our Christmas may not be looking as festive as we're used to. It's a little different. It's not, we're more cautious. I don't know about you, but more people I'm talking to are feeling a bit worn out by those 9 months that we've gone through. It's almost as if we're on guard all the time to be aware of our surroundings, to be aware of our proximity, to be aware of washing our hands, to be aware, right? Is it time for a test? Has someone been exposed? Have I been exposed? Oh my gosh, I've got a cough. Must I have it, right? I mean, these are the things that go through our minds after 9 months of this. And we're feeling a little worn on. So today we're going to talk about joy. We're going to talk about joy, because I think joy in the holidays, enjoying this time of year, enjoying our hearts is very important for us, and we'll talk about why in just a few minutes. So let's see what Mr. Scrooge and the Ghost of Christmas Present is up to. So the big old festive ghost is a jovial representation of generosity, goodwill, and celebration. Perhaps you thought of Santa Claus when you saw the picture of him. He kind of has a Santa-ish look in a paganistic sort of way, in the green and the red and so forth. He doesn't have the gray beard. But he's the complete opposite of Scrooge, isn't he? He's big and boisterous and happy and jovial and kind and generous. Scrooge is none of those things. And Dickens uses this contrast in much of the book, showing us the light and the dark. If you remember the Ghost of Christmas Past last week, it was all light. And Scrooge kept saying, "You're too bright, you're too bright." Because he was used to living in that dingy, dark house, right? So we see this contrast throughout. So the first thing the ghost shows him is his own presence, his own joyful heart, and his swordless scabbard, which is representing peace on earth. Hey, I'm unarmed here. I am peace on earth, right? That's what he's representing. And the bounty in the room is the abundance that we see this time of year. The abundance that we see that was to be shared with family and friends and those in need. That's what he's representing there. And his horn of plenty, again, is, like I said, his own brand of magic, his own brand of fairy dust that he spreads around, bringing joy to people. So this ghost takes Mr. Scrooge first out to Christmas morning in the streets. And during Victorian England, during that time frame, everybody prepared their homes for guests and the big feast. So he saw people decorating their homes and cleaning their homes, and people shopping for all of the wonderful things. The merchants were overflowing with goods, just like we do today. And they were out buying for dinner for that evening to have all their guests and so forth come along. And they would get together and play games and have food and share conversations, much like we do today. Except we might have a little football and parades thrown in there, right? Are we having those this year? Are we having football and parades? I don't know if we are or not. But anyway, that may be the difference that they had that we did not have. But what Scrooge notices is that while there is nothing very cheerful about the climate or the town, there was still cheerfulness all around. Now that's from Dickens, of course. And you can almost hear him kind of going, why would they be cheerful when the weather's not good, it's cold, and these people don't really have much anyway, right? Why would they be cheerful? Well, the next stop that they head to is Bob Cratchit's home. Now, Bob, of course, if you remember from last week, is Mr. Scrooge's clerk, his employee. And their family is enjoying Christmas. And now the Cratchits live in poverty. They live in poverty, but they're all wearing the best clothes that they own, and they're enjoying their holiday meal, meager as it is. And one of the things in the book that was interesting to me was that Mrs. Cratchit, they said she had on her turned-out dress. And when I looked that up, it meant that she had turned the dress inside out to wear. during that time, with folks who didn't have much, the ladies would wear their dresses with the right side out, if you will, as long as they could. And then when that side got soiled or tattered in some way, they would turn the dress inside out and wear the other side for a while. And they would adorn that side with ribbons and things, which were a lot less expensive than buying fabric or having another dress made. So I found that interesting. I did not know that about clothing in that time period. So they were all dressed in the finest that they had, and we see their food and their conversation, and they're so jovial and cheerful around the table, and they're sharing toasts. And Bob raises his glass to Mr. Scrooge. Long life, Merry Christmas. And Mrs. Cratchit goes, whoa, that man is the source of our poverty, of your disappointment. He's mean. He's miserly. I'm not toasting him. I'm not toasting his good health. And Bob says, I think her name's Martha. I can't remember. Martha, the children. It's Christmas. She says, I will toast him for you and for the holiday, but I will not toast him for him. So she didn't like that very much. Now remember, Scrooge and the ghost of Christmas Present are in the room. So he hears this. He's touched by Bob's kindness, but he's also very aware of Mrs. Cratchit's disdain for him, right? Scrooge's attention, though, is really drawn to Tiny Tim. Now, if you remember, Tiny Tim is Cratchit's young son who has a crippled leg and walks with a crutch. And he said to the ghost, he goes, I didn't know he had a crippled son. The ghost says, you never ask. So Scrooge is getting these little pings, isn't he? Kind of all through this visit, he's just getting these little pokes. And the ghost, he asked the ghost, he says, so is Tiny Tim going to be okay? Is he going to live? And the ghost says, not unless he gets some help. No. Cratchits don't have the money to get him the medical care that he needs, and I see in the future Christmases an empty place where he's sitting today and his crutch against the wall with no owner. So no, he won't be here. And Scrooge gets very upset. He's like, that's not right. That's not right. Why can't he get what he needs? Well, the ghost turned to him and he said, if he's likely to die, he'd better do it and decrease the surplus population. Scrooge cringed because he had said those very words to the men that came to his office asking for donations for charity. So once again, Scrooge is experiencing his own words, right? His own words. The ghost then asks him, he says, so would you be the one that would decide who lives and who dies? Scrooge began to back up from that too, because suddenly he'd put a face on this mass of people that he was talking about, and now he's got little Tiny Tim in his sights and his vision. And when we have a connection with someone and they're no longer them or they, our hearts can open, can't they? We can begin to open our hearts to them. Our perspective changes from them, those people, that faceless enemy, into oneness and recognizing our connectivity with each other. And that's what was sort of happening to Mr. Scrooge here. As they left, he realized that the Cratchits were not a handsome family. They were not well dressed. Their shoes were far from waterproof. Their clothes were scanty. But they were happy, grateful, pleased with one another, and contented with the time. The ghost then showed Scrooge many others who had very little but were celebrating the joy of the season. He took them to a miner's camp where they lived in really small huts and they didn't have very much, but they were singing and they were so happy, and they went inside the hut and he got to be involved with that and see what was going on. And what he noticed was this giant ghost fit into that little tiny hut just fine. And what he got from that was that Christmas fits everywhere. Christmas fits everywhere. So the ghost showed him two men in a lonely lighthouse, way out on the end of a rock. celebrating Christmas, singing a song, toasting with their grog. He then took them to a cargo ship way out in the middle of the sea, and they're singing Christmas carols and sharing dinner with each other and sharing stories. And then finally he ends up at his nephew Fred's house. Remember Fred? Fred is his nephew, filled with the holiday spirit, comes into the shop wishing a Merry Christmas. Come and join us for dinner, my wife and I and our friends. To which Scrooge said, bah, humbug, right? And then he kept dismissing him, good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon, trying to get rid of him and his joy out of his office. Well, now, as Scrooge looks into the house and what's happening, his heart is touched by what a wonderful group of friends that he has and the festivities that they have happening. And he's caught up in the games and things that they're playing. And he begs the ghost, can we stay just a bit longer? They're playing some music now and they're singing. He became almost childlike in his enthusiasm for his nephew's party. And his nephew, who had his mother's big heart for her brother Scrooge, raised his glass in toast to his Uncle Scrooge. Merry Christmas, long life. To which his guest said, whoa, don't ask me to toast him. He's mean, he's miserly, he's cantankerous. He's never been nice to you. Why would you want to toast him? To which Fred replies, I feel sorry for him. You see, my Uncle Scrooge suffers at his own hand. His offenses carry their own punishment. His offenses carry their own punishment, or what we might call the law of cause and effect, right? What we might call the law of cause and effect. And we see this a lot in this story, the way the ghost was turning Scrooge's words back to him, right? The way that the others didn't want to toast Scrooge because of his behavior, so his actions were being brought back to him. Scrooge is a man of wealth, of prestige. He's got a successful business. He lives in Marley's big old drafty, empty mansion alone. Doesn't burn the lights, barely keeps it warm, lives in one room, locks himself in, eats from a little bowl over this fire pit, right? So he's got his wealth, but he doesn't enjoy it and he doesn't share it. He's miserly. And we see in this story many of these themes throughout. And I think, again, that's why it speaks to us and has spoken for 170 years, is because the themes are so universal that we all understand them. The ghost of Marley warns Scrooge that he will be at the effect of his actions in death if he doesn't do something now to change that. And we know that to be true in our teaching, don't we? We can change our thinking today to affect what happens in our future. Fred's holiday spirit and his warm group of friends that he had to celebrate. Now, Scrooge was really quick to point out to Fred that he didn't have anything. He was just not rich like his Uncle Scrooge. And Scrooge says, so what have you got to be happy about and cheerful about for the holidays? You don't have anything. And he says, well, Uncle, you have everything, but you're not happy. Right? How does this work? How does this work? So Scrooge's punishment is in the present, right? It's in the present and what's happening in his life. As the Scrooge and Fred left Fred's party, Dickens wrote, much they saw and far they went, and many homes they visited, but always with a happy end. The spirits stood beside sick beds, and they were cheerful, on foreign lands, and they were close at home, by struggling men, and they were patient in their greater hope, by poverty, and it was rich, in almshouse, hospital, and jail, in misery's every refuge, where vain man in his little brief authority had not made fast the door and barred the spirit out, he left his blessing and taught Scrooge his precepts. So again, here we are in 2020, not Victorian England, and we've got a pandemic decor happening a little bit. We were in a restaurant the other night, and their Christmas tree has masks and gloves on it. Yeah, makes us chuckle, and yet, wow, that's our 2020 Christmas package, right? Like, my goodness. And you've probably seen the Christmas angel made out of a mask, right? So at least we're finding our humor. And for the last 9 months, that's what I've witnessed, is we found some humor in this, finally. We are finding so much creativity and workarounds and adaptability. I mean, think of the things we've learned and done over the past 9 months that, well, they weren't on our radar to do this year. Things like Zoom calls and learning even what that was, right? And Zoom happy hours. Anybody had those? Yeah, those are kind of fun, right? Zoom game nights. Zoom family reunions with people that you probably wouldn't go and physically visit, but now you're visiting with on the internet through this wonderful video process. The drive-through Christmas decorations. Anybody done that yet? Down at Talking Stick, you can drive through their little Christmas decorations at the ballpark. And curbside everything. Every place we go, there's a couple of reserved parking spots for curbside pickup. People will bring it right to you. And being present. There has been a presencing that's happened with this, of our distance presence, of our hand washing presence. We've been a little more present because of this. You know, maybe that's the side effect, is bringing us more presently aware in the moment. 2020 might be remembered as the Christmas of Scrooge. But like Scrooge's journey with this ghost of Christmas present, we can see how even in challenging times, even as the ghost went into all of these challenging situations of poverty and lack and being far away or being in lonely places, they paused. They paused in the present and were present to every moment for the holiday, for the Christmas spirit. And we can do that even in our pandemic Christmas, can't we? If you find that your Christmas spirit might be a little lacking perhaps this year, remember that we can be at the effect of the world outside of us, right? Y'all do know that's temporary, right? Everybody knows this is temporary. Yes? This will pass, right? Feels like it's been here forever, and it will be here forever. But if you remember that recession thing we went through that really felt like it lasted forever, it did pass, and things did get better. This will too. This will too. This is a temporary effect, just like the world keeps moving on. It does. So we can choose to go within. We can choose to go to joy instead. Ernest Holmes, the author of The Science of Mind, the founder of our teaching, has a beautiful, beautiful quote that so, I think, summarizes really where we are. He says, things crowd in on us until we lose some of the greatest of all gifts, the simple, spontaneous joy of living and a trust in the power of good, which alone is able, ready, and willing to meet all of our needs. Let us then again return to the place of assurance that comes with the simplicity of faith. Isn't that beautiful? Things do have crowded in on us, haven't they? It feels heavy. But we can return to that place of the simplicity of faith. Faith and trust in God, in the universal laws and how they work, in the fact that we live in an ordered universe and that everything always unfolds in perfect and divine right order, even though we may not be able to see it in our very own spirituality. We are spiritual beings. As Diane said, we are the light. We are the light. Being present in this now moment is all we really have, isn't it? Being present in this now moment is all we really have. The past is a memory, and the future is not yet here. Now think about that. The past is a memory and the stories that we make up about it. And the future's not here. We may project, we may fear, we may think about, we may plan for, but we don't know. All we have is right now. All we have is right now, this moment. And things can change that future anyway. Thank goodness, right? Thank goodness. So choosing to be present, to be the present, and finding our joy in every moment. So let's wrap up today with our spiritual practices and see how we can embrace and live in the present. If you're not signed up for our Mindful Mondays, you can do so if you're in the room, on the clipboard in the lobby. If you're online and you'd like to sign up, you can send me an email and I'll add you to the list. You'll get a once-a-week email on Mondays about the message, the quotes, and more details on the spiritual practices. So I hope you can sign up for that. We've got quite a nice group of folks that are receiving that already. All right, number 1, our offenses carry their own punishment. Now, this is how Fred described his uncle's actions, recognizing that Scrooge lived a miserable life of his own making. Like Marley's ghost told him, though, suffering's not required. Now, Ernest Holmes tells us this. The world has learned all it needs to from suffering. Where are we choosing to suffer in our lives? Where are we choosing to suffer in our lives? I invite you this week to look at any area of your life where things always seem to go wrong. My career is never perfect. My finances, I can never get ahead. I can never find a relationship or keep a relationship, or my relationship is always on the rocks. My health, oh my gosh, I've always got health challenges. I can never seem to get healthy. Where is that always area of your life? Look at that and see if you can discover where you are in that situation. We are the ones that can affect our situations. It's never anything about the outside, is it? It's never anything about what's happening out there. It's only about what's happening in here. So this week is looking at that. If it's relationship, how are we contributing to the upset? Are we showing up as peace? Or are we showing up as combativeness? If it's finance, are you being miserly like Scrooge? Or are, like Bob Cratchit, believing this is as good as it gets? Are we making changes that will impact our future in a positive way? If it's career or creativity, where are you blocking the natural creativity of Source? We live in the most creative universe. We live in this field of infinite possibilities. But when we get our ego stuck in, I've got to do it my way, we've talked about this, and some of us know this well. But when we do that, we block the flow rather than opening up to infinite possibilities and allowing the creative flow to flow through us. Doing our deeper spiritual work allows us to better understand all of these universal laws and how we can live within them and use them and access them to our benefit. Number 2 is to seize the moment. Seize the moment. Living in the present is how we do that, right? If we're worried about the future and thinking about something else over here, we're not aware of what's happening over here at all, are we, in this right now moment? Or if we're remembering or regretting something that happened in the past, we're reliving that experience and blah, 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 and we're not aware of what's happening right here, are we? So those are the ways that we lose the moment. But seizing the moment is staying present. I don't know if you remember in the story, but the ghost of Christmas Present only lived one day. By the end of the evening, he'd already begun to turn gray and age, and Scrooge got concerned. He goes, why are you I'm not aging anymore. Why are you aging? He goes, I only live one day. I am the present. I am the present. I only live one day. When we can become the present in our life and live in each moment, we can seize the love and the joy that's in that moment, because that's where those exist, isn't it? Right in this moment, we can be present to it and we can seize it in that moment. So this week, your practice is to remind yourself to be present while you're driving. Okay? Many of us have a tendency when we get in the car, we're going to turn on the radio, turn on a podcast, turn on a book. We're going to get on the phone. We're going to worry about something that's coming up, plan for something that's happening, think about something that happened before, right? We're going to do all that. I mean, we got all this stuff going on in that car, right? Turn that off and bring yourself fully present. Make it a spiritual practice. Bring yourself fully present to driving. Feel the steering wheel, feel the seat, feel the pressure on the pedals, feel the temperature in the car. Be aware of the drivers, not just the car, but who's in the car, right? Aware of what you're passing, everything. How many of us go to work every day and never see a thing that we drive by? The landscaping, what's happening there. Not to the point of distraction, but to the point of noticing. And make it a spiritual practice of being fully present every moment of your drive. And then once you've mastered that, take up something a little more challenging. Give up worry. Give up resentment. Things of the past, things of the future, right? Number 3 is to choose joy. Ernest Holmes reminds us that joy lives within. Joy lives within. The Tao tells us that we should not give away our power by believing that our joy is external to us. Because anytime we do that, we also give that the power to take away our joy, don't we? Yeah. Spirituality says joy is a quality of God, and therefore we all have it within us. We all automatically have that within us. Science tells us that joy boosts our immune system, that it promotes better overall health, it fights stress and pain, and supports longevity. That's because of the neurotransmitters and the way the chemicals and things go off in our brain when joy is experienced. So if you're struggling with finding joy this week, practice smiling. Because when we smile, it sends off those transmitters in our brain. When those transmitters in our brain go off, we smile. It works both ways. So smiling, we've talked before about looking up. Looking up lifts us, lifts our spirits. Get outside, get some air and some sunshine, and meditate more. Meditate more to find that sense of inner joy. So Ebenezer ended his evening with the ghost of Christmas present in deep reflection on what he had seen and what he had felt, and with all of his travels that day. And he was realizing for the first time, probably in a very long time, how the joy was missing in his life. That all these other people that didn't have as much bounty as he had in his life, as much good, had so much joy that he didn't have. But as the clock struck midnight and the ghost disappeared, true to Marley's words, he looked up and saw a solemn phantom, draped and hooded, coming towards him like mist on the ground. And we'll talk about that next week. But today we're going to close out with a quote from our book of the month from Alan, The Tao Made Easy. He says, "The present moment is fully embodied. The past and the future are ghosts. Reality exists only now." And I love that. As I thought about that, it struck a chord in the discussion on Tuesday, and I told him I was going to use it because it just really is such a powerful quote that the past and the future are ghosts. They really don't exist. All that exists is right now in this moment. So be present now. So it is. Would you join me for an affirmative prayer? How good it is that we go within, just bringing all of our awareness fully present into this now moment, into this breath, feeling the chair beneath us and our presence in the room. We recognize that there is one power, one presence, one life, and that is God. It is the infinite wisdom, wholeness, life, oneness, source. It is the all that is. It is love and harmony and joy and peace. And I am that which it is, for I am made of that infinite one substance. That which makes stars makes me. And as that, I am that joy and that peace, that harmony, that love. And as I know that for myself, I know that for each of us that's gathered here today, either in person or in virtual church, knowing that we have all collectively come together in the one to share this time, this moment, this message, to be in community together. And so knowing that oneness and that unity that we are, I speak my word for and about each of us, knowing this day the perfection of our lives, that we are joy, and that we are fully present in this now moment, that we are awake and aware of our own divinity, the spirit that lives within us, as us. And I know that for anyone who is gathered today, or anyone anywhere that has anything on their heart and their mind for which they seek prayer, that as they lift that into their consciousness, that we know that that prayer is answered, that whatever needs to be healed is healed. If there's information that needs to be received, it is received, revealed easily. If there's financial flow, abundance that's needed, we know that it is coming in amazing ways, sourced of divine sources with ease and grace, with more than enough. If there is love, we know that there's a bounty of love unfolding. And so it is with a grateful heart, filled with joy and thanksgiving, that I release this prayer into the action of law, the activity of mind, knowing, claiming, and accepting that it is already done in the mind of God. And we affirm this together by saying, and so it is.